Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Welcome to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the place, the home, the platform, the podcast to help you launch your best, most true, authentic business voice. Hell, your most authentic voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, meet the coolest people in the world. Hell, that's what I get to do. And keep liking, watching, sharing, telling your family on iHeartMedia, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts right now. And folks, the way that we accomplish all of that is we find people that walk the walk. And today is no exceptions. In fact, we have our first three-peat in regards to podcast guest. Corey Dissin is in the house with me today. Corey, thanks so much for coming back. We really appreciate it.
Good to see you, John. Really good to be here with you today.
It feels great. Oh my God. And you look like $1 billion. California life is obviously treating you well. And look, folks, if you're on social media, even if you're under a rock, you would know Corey Dissin as your business bodyguard.
For sure.
I love the fact you're social media king, your coach, your marketing and social media guru. Hell, not only that, creates web designs, graphic designs. I'm the benefactor personally of now this is my third run to the well in regards to graphic design.
You've done a three-peat with me.
Damn right. Well, only because you're really good. And you're really good. And that's the home. And folks, today, most importantly, at least today, but for me, I'm so damn proud about the fact that I get to say published author Corey Dissin, the book Going the Distance. Oh, not just you. And I got my pen in
there. It is.
It's great. And I'm reading it to get it right. Just the title makes me really happy, which is 10 rounds. And we'll talk about the way this is drawn out. 10 rounds to a championship life and career. Here's the part I love. Life lessons inside a tribute wrapped in a memoir. It just sounds like the coolest souffle that you could pull together. Corey, first off, congratulations, man.
Thanks, brother.
And it's a damn good book, too. What gave you the idea to lay it out the way that you did? In essence, a top 10, so to speak.
Well, look, I have had the opportunity to be the consumer of a lot of self-help books from people that I know, people that are approaching me for business. And quite frankly, I'm not a good reader. Like it takes something that really has to capture my attention for me to devote to reading an entire book. And I bailed on so many books, but I wanted to put a book together that had a different approach, a different framework, something unique, something that fit the brand, that whole thing. And it, as I was mapping this whole thing out, it just kept coming back to how boxing had was sort of woven into the fiber of my life, whether it was as a fan or whether it was as promoting fights, creating commercials, whether it was training as a boxer, the boxers that I've met, the pop culture that I'm a fan of. All these things kind of were sprinkled amongst, my 50 years here. And I said, you know what? This is the ticket. I'm going to write it as a 10-round fight. And we're not going to have chapters. We're going to have rounds. The title, Going the Distance, is in a fight. And we got the name in there, which is great for the personal brand, et cetera. Lesson learned for all you people out there, if you can brandify your stuff. But boxing and life is a fight, man. Life is a fight. You got to learn how to take a beating and how to punch back and how to prepare. All those things are part and parcel with the go get it way.
I I love the way you just said that. And folks, when you, and back to the brand for a moment, and you talk about boxing being interwoven. If you go to Corey's new website, which is fucking awesome, by the way, he would know. But
I might know the designer of that site.
Right? But trust the services of the Alpha Dog Executive Entrepreneurial Evangelist. There's the brand. You talk about the brand, and the toughness in the boxing. Folks, there's way more layers than that, but I understand it. That's the key brand. I know that. When you read the book, you realize there's a hell of a lot more depth included in all that too, which is what was fun for me. But I'll ask you right away. There's 10 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that they're laid out between the theme and the examples and the scorecard, even is that analogy at the end of each chapter. What chapters were the easier to write for you? Like, what were like, oh, this is a no-brainer, and boom, 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 done.
I'm going to answer that in a counterintuitive sense and tell you which ones were the hardest.
I had to think with counterintuitive. Okay, now I got you. Go. Right. Go. Well, that was going to be my next question. You're a mind reader. All right, go.
Yeah, the hard chapter, well, the hardest was the one about my mother.
Sure.
Not even close. Mm-hmm. That was very, very difficult for me to even just get through because she recently passed in January of 2022.
Yeah.
And, that just sucked so bad that I had to deal with that. But, and it is in the book and I talk about it. Mm-hmm. Probably writing, but both my parents. My father's still alive. God bless. He's still kicking it, going to be 82 years old.
Mm.
Obviously the chapter about mom was emotional.
Mm-hmm.
The chapter about my dad, I wanted to make sure I'd have his approval, but he didn't know I was writing it. I didn't tell him till it was done. And it was really important that when he saw that for the first time and he read it, that it made an impact, and he basically gave me his stamp of approval. And thank goodness it turned out that way. But that was those two chapters were they were rough, man. They were rough, but we got through them. And quite honestly, the chapter about my wife wasn't the easiest, only because she was 10 feet away from me in the next room over. And I didn't want to reveal anything to her until it was done. But when it was done, I did read it to her privately, sitting in my office, and performed it for her basically, so she can get the emotion and the tone of voice and the enunciation. And we got the tears. So I was like, yes, good job, Core Man.
I love this. Folks, we're going to get into the particulars of each of these individuals real fast, though, in passing. I am such a fan of Elaine, known as the Queen in this book and in general. Elaine
has her own set of fans for sure.
Well, and rightfully so. So I'm excited to get to that round. But I'm going to ask you early on, like, for instance, I love the fact that I was thinking in regards to the path, the geographical or even the logistical path. And I think about starting with bologna sandwiches.
My first job in the media.
Talk to me. I love this. Talk about Mr. Todd for me and the bologna sandwich. I love this.
Well, Mr. Todd, Mr. Perry Todd, God rest his soul.
Mm-hmm.
He was my best friend's father. And he happened to do some, video production work. He was a photographer. He had a dark room in his garage. And, as buddies do at the lunch table in high school, you come over for a sleepover. We'll hang out. We'll get pizza. And then he kind of said, hey, why don't you come with me to this TV shoot? And I was like, TV shoot. That's interesting.
Right.
Thinking, it's very Hollywood and very glamorous, and, I'm going to meet famous people, and this is going to be really cool. And, I show up on set, and my job was literally to make bologna sandwiches for the cast and crew. And I later learned that was called craft services. That was the fancy title for it.
How old are you when you're in craft services?
14.
Damn. See, Right away, folks, one of the things, without me sounding like I'm blowing smoke, but it's a reminder that the influence of things early on, hustle comes up a lot in this book.
Oh,
But
no
as a
doubt.
14-year-old kid, what was that like? I know how to make a bologna sandwich. I have done that, so you don't need to teach me.
I'm sure. Probably last night you might
I
have
grew
had
up in
one.
Northeast Philadelphia, and I carry that with me everywhere I go. I know how. But what I was going to ask you is, there was a fair amount of hours that you're putting in, and doing high-level grunt work, and so to speak. What kept you there? You hear about people quitting their jobs at McDonald's all the time. What kept you there?
Well, my mom always used to say, and there is a line in the book dedicated to this, that I had vision. And you know me personally, and
Yep.
we've sat across from each other. I said, listen, here's what's going to happen down the road.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen it play out in real time. I've kind of always had that knack where I could see where things were going if I put forth the requisite effort. And I just, for whatever reason, just being in the presence, being in the radius of the cameras and the lights, and hearing him say, okay, get ready to go to camera one, cut to camera one, go to camera two, fade in, hearing all that stuff, that just got my wheels turning like, this is pretty cool. And, you know, I saw a future in that. I didn't know exactly what it was, but something in television, radio, film, media, there was something there that just sounded a lot sexier to me. Like, that's something I wanted to do. And I never had an issue with hard work. So I figured if I worked hard, good things would happen. And, you know, I'm not sitting here with you today unless I put in that effort at 14 years old. And by the way, it has enabled me to take that story of the value of that hard work, why you should be doing it too. I don't say it because I read it in a book somewhere. I say it because I lived it.
Corey, full transparencies, folks. So if you caught the first 2 times that I had Corey on, and once with Elaine, then you know, and if not, I'll happily share, which is Corey has coached me, and I am the direct benefactor of that. It's not just making logos. It's not just, it's a hell of a lot more than that. So I was one of the OG, I was one of the OG students, so to speak.
Yeah, man.
And so that vision part that Corey talks about, I get that. I have benefited from it. I'll say with all transparency, I've also, when I stepped away, got a little lost without it. And so I know that to be so. But the hard work part, it helps so much after reading this book, because Corey's a driver. Corey's a driver. As a student, Corey's a driver. When you realize how much work you were putting in, it makes all of the rest of this so much better fleshed out in terms of, to me personally, that it's like you're literally killing yourself at 14 for a vision that you can't quite flesh out, other than you're like, I kind of like this and this sounds kind of fun. And I think that part was really commendable.
Well, I mean, you know, it's all about, you know, from small acorns grow big oaks. That's a kind of common theme in there. And even, you know, as a youngster, you know, my mother would say, you got to stand on your own 2 feet. You got to make things happen. You got to be assertive. You know, if you want to make things happen, you got to learn to be independent. And if I was not being pushed in that regard at home, I wouldn't have taken that with me to possible employment, to possible success on the athletic field. You know, it all started there. And it just so happened that the lessons that I kept learning from these people mentioned in the book, they kind of fit together almost like, you know, Tetris. I'm dating myself a little bit, but they all kind of lock in and make this wall. And it's almost like turned it in retrospect. I didn't know this writing it, but as it kind of fleshed out, it was almost like a Forrest Gump-like experience, how one lesson fed off the 2 and 3 before it, and so on and so forth. And I continue to use these lessons even today.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's for me personally or what recommending to coaching clients or my kids, it's just, that's why I wanted to put them in the book, because guess what? You can use them too.
See, I think that's kind of the cool thing, in essence, the way that you've woven everything together. When you wrote, I'm sorry, when you,
Hey, John Duffin speaks for a living, just
oh,
for
he's a pro, go to the pros. But when you were writing this, when you were going through the draft and the edit and all that sort of thing, were you coming up with anything? What was going through your mind as you were reliving some of those really early like parts? What was it like?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, there is a process when you're putting a book together, and I knew I had to narrow down who the 10 people were going to
Yeah,
be,
yeah,
which was a tough task. And then the way I actually did it is I narrowed it down to the 10 people. Then I put some thought to what was the major lesson that I learned from each of these people. I had those two
right.
things first, so I knew
Mhm.
what all the chapters or rounds would be, and I knew all the lessons that I took from them. And then from there, I started to I literally would jot down, recollections of this anecdote, this story. And as I started to jot them all down, I started to say, wow, this can connect in this way. And then I can latch this onto here. And it really turned into this fluid being, or whatever you want to call it. I didn't know it was going to turn out that way. I'm happy as hell it did.
Yeah.
But everything seemed to fit. And then, with the chronology of the book, when one episode in chapter 5 kind of falls into place, you realize that the things I learned in chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 had everything to do with what happened in chapter 5, and so on and so forth. By the time we get to the end, it all kind of comes together. It's almost like, back in the day, made for TV movie where everybody,
everybody
it all comes together at the end. Yeah.
It just makes me happy. Folks, so not just all the stuff about Corey and Elaine, they've got 2 sons. Corey's, like I said, a stepdad, and then you've got Jordan, who's the athlete prodigy, which immediately then
He's
locks
pretty good
back to Coach Clark and Coach Goodwin. I want to focus on the sacrifice and losing some wings. I'm lumping them together simply because they're coaches, not because they're the same people. But I want to go to there as well, too, in terms of connecting the dots with you, the coaches, your son. What was that like, reliving that with those coaches?
Well, the cool thing is yes, I didn't necessarily relive all these moments when I put the book together. Let me be clear on that.
Yeah, sure.
I just documented them because, number one, I've been fortunate that I've been able to keep in touch with both of these guys all along. But keep in mind, I went to high school many moons ago. For me personally, whether it's a text or a Facebook message, I've been able to bump into them as an adult. But then also because they both happen to be involved in baseball, and I had a son who was coming up through the ranks. I don't want to say they had a part in his trajectory, but there was some times where I was able to seek some advice from them, and they met my son in person, which was completely surreal, to be in the same room with both my son, who's a baseball player, and these coaches, and to be on the level with these guys. I'll never think I'm on the level with them. They're always coach to me, no matter what. It was amazing how it all turned out. Felt like it was meant to be. I mean, we joke, my wife and I, it's kind of like a movie. It's literally a movie. How, guys who broke my balls and put me through the ringer as a teenager, and to set me straight, because I was young and dumb, at 15, 16, 17.
Oh, we know everything then.
I mean, I was a complete nincompoop at that point. And, these guys, made an impact on my life that literally went into my body and filtered out back to me, to my kids. Like I was saying things to my children that originated from them, and not even all on a baseball field. I coached my son until he was 13 years old, and all the teams he was on, and a lot of the the practice agendas and the pep talks and the signals and the plays, these were all just regurgitated from what these two guys taught me. But even beyond that, self-sacrifice, talent is overrated. Those are the two biggest things that I learned from those guys, because Coach Clark basically literally called me the slowest man on the face of the earth. But I could hit, and I worked hard, and I was rewarded for working hard. I was the first person at practice, the last person to leave. I sprinted everywhere on the field, and getting recognition for said hustle.
You got the medal.
To that.
You got the medal.
That was a thing. And when you read the book, you'll understand what all that means. That was important to me. I didn't care if I was the MVP. Of course, we wanted to win and be champions, but I had my sights set on a particular award that recognized hustle. And we talked about hustle earlier with Mr. Todd, and 14 the bologna sandwiches. It's the same thing. It's like you put forth the work, you get the spoils. You got to work hard first, and then you get what you want. And then we just keep that philosophy kept mutating, and it was 2.0, 3.0, all these different software versions of it, because it's the same basic concept. And you can apply it to your physical fitness. You can apply it to your education, your career, your relationships with your siblings, with your spouse, with your kids. It all applies. And that's why I wanted to share this with everybody.
I think there's a vulnerability in all of that as well, too, that I look at you and the brand is Tough Guy. And I love the fact that you're transparent enough in the book that you share examples where things didn't necessarily go your way, or choices were offered to you that were tough. The folded up uniform was an example of the one of a choice you had to make. Folks, the details will be in the book in that regard too, which is why you need to read the book. But Corey, that example to me signifies at a very young age things that go through my head now at a much older age in regards to choices I still have to remember to make, and I don't always do. So that's specific where you had to make a choice. Care to share, elaborate on that a little bit? I just love.
Well, I'm not going to leave everyone in too much suspense, but I don't want to give that particular anecdote.
I know, that's fine.
But what I'll say is that especially in today's culture, with instant gratification and social media, and you can press a button just now and literally you add in Chat GPT and all this stuff. There's a lot of snap your fingers and get results, and it is much easier to choose the easy path. People do it, default to that all the time. And, it's the road less traveled, right? It's so hard to volunteer to go down an unattractive road, a road filled with landmines, a road filled with obstacles, a road where you're not going to get what you want right away. And the episode that we're alluding to here illustrated that to me in pretty clear terms. Yeah. You can go this way, Corey, and you can go this way. One way, you're going to get exactly what you want. Another way, you're going to wind up sacrificing something. So I had to make that decision. What was I going to do without? And I have carried that specific lesson, especially to coaching clients and content. And I've written articles about it and done videos about it. What are you willing to do without to eventually get what you want? Most people are not willing to forego a simple pleasure or a convenience or sleep or eating a certain type of food or devoting an inordinate amount of time on top of time you're already dedicating. Most people don't want to do that. And at that early age, at that time, I think I was 16 when I learned that lesson, that's when some clay dried pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, I get it. See what you mean, coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pick the right thing.
See, you just said something, and that's the part. As making a living as a coach, the reminder, first off, to me and to anyone who's watching and or listening and or reading this, which is one of the things you have shared that, and you've gotten pushback, in terms of you've gotten it in social media, you've gotten it from clients, you got it from me, that it's like, I own that. I own that. I don't like it, but I own it. And the fact is, I think one of the kudos to you as a coach is that you make that aspect really clear. It's the reason I brought it up, that chapter and that example, because that was something that came to me, a personal realization was, again, here's somebody who walks the walk. Literally, here is somebody who walks the walk. And that's really important.
No doubt.
So from a Philly side, folks, if you're getting this from Philadelphia, PA, and we cover a lot of geographical ground on this podcast too, it's not even a question. It was just an appreciation when you were bringing up Delaware Avenue and the 8th floor. Folks, you have to be a certain age and you have to be in Philadelphia to even know what the hell that is.
Yeah, man.
Right? I just remember, it's like, oh, I remember from that tough guy mode, those experiences that you had.
Yeah.
So you got the chance to be a bouncer. No one ever asked me to be one. So here's
there's a joke with bounced in there somewhere. I'll just leave
yeah, right. And by the way, people have already processed that as they're looking or hearing me. The stupidest question, which is, were you afraid? Like, do bouncers get afraid? I
had my moments, but I was still young and dumb enough and had nothing enough to lose at that point, where your testosterone is pumping on high, and I'm a bigger guy and know how to handle myself, and but I worked in all sorts of weird situations, and thank goodness I had some people around me. One of the guys we mentioned in the book is an ex-police officer who I had a chance to work with, who taught me a lot, not just how to handle myself in those situations, but also how to use your head and start low. But I've been in some, this is not necessarily in the book, but, I've faced weapons, knives, guns. I've been, in fisticuffs where it was me and another bouncer against 6 or 7 guys. I've been maced. If you never want to know what that feels like, that doesn't feel very good.
I don't want to know. I mean, I want to hear you, but I don't really want to know.
And I happened to work in a couple of different places that had some tough customers. I mean, I worked in South Philly. I worked right next to it. I worked at Philly Legends, which, at the Holiday Inn, right?
There you go.
On Packer Avenue,
folks.
So if you know what that crew, if that like we're talking about neighborhood stuff now, but if that'll give you everything you need to know. And I ran the door at that joint. I ran the door at the place in Northeast Philly that had a certain young gang contingent that would go there. You learn how to handle yourself. You see people at their worst. But, in short, there were moments I was like, oh, man, this is going to hurt. But the good news is I got to dish it out, too.
Yeah, right.
And, even Elaine can vouch for me, too, because at one of the joints I worked, this is it right after we met.
Okay.
I got her a job working in the back office, cashing out the bartenders and counting the money and all that stuff. And there used to be a camera that was focused on the front door that had to be installed because of the state police. They wanted to make sure everyone in there was being carded. That was a big thing. And there was a particular moment where Elaine was literally watching me on camera, and I'm seated on a stool.
Yep.
And I'm carding people, and some guy tried to get wise, and she could probably tell the story better than me, but in the middle of me carding a line of people, I, with my other hand, head down, just grabbed the guy and disposed of him while I was carding the other people. But, I've been in some scrapes. Thank goodness I was never really seriously injured. A little bump here, a little scratch there, but it could have been a lot worse.
And looking at you now, even tougher still. Even tougher still now, man. There's vision, hustle, and then I'm adding a word, which is commitment. You know somebody that I know, and you knew him first and better. But I thought, like, when you talk about the Yankee and our friend and author Dana Cavalier.
Yep, Dana's the man. I mean, he was a guy that I worked with one-on-one for 3.5 years.
Right.
And he came along at a point in my life right around the same time you and I sort of connected on the coaching stuff. And, not only did I want to get back to the physicality that I was used to, I was always been an athlete working in the gym, but there was a period where, when you're driving around all over the East Coast and you're going through one drive-through after the next and eating hamburgers and cheesesteaks and pizza at baseball fields, got out of hand. I put on a little bit extra weight. I wasn't happy with myself. So originally it was, hey, who can I bring in who is an expert that isn't the local schmuck just trying to sell me personal training fees? So I went and got the strength and conditioning director for the New York Yankees to work with me. And then on top of that, he was coaching entrepreneurs, and he helped me create the blueprint to make my exodus from being an employee, from being an employee to be a full-time entrepreneur. And so, he played a big part in that, and I'm forever grateful for that. And he's an author, so I kind of wanted to take a page out of his book and do what he did. He wrote,
I turned my head for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't have it I typically have it right in front of me. I was fishing for the copy of the book myself too.
Habits of a Champion.
Habits of a Champion and Habits of a Champion team, and has written some kids' books.
Absolutely.
Instilling. I get to work with Dana as part of a group thing, and he's one of my all-time favorite people. You said something, though, and this goes back to the commitment part, and this is one thing I'm going to do. Like, it might sound like admiration, but it's more that sense of going back to the vision when you knew that was a legit commitment. So it wasn't like you dove right in or it just like blindly jumped in. You knew it and you did it anyway. And what for you has been as a coach, as a successful coach, what's it like having a coach for you?
Well, look, first thing you have to understand is even the most elite professionals, athletes have coaches.
Right.
Muhammad Ali, heavyweight champion of the world, had Angelo Dundee in his corner.
I remember Angelo Dundee. Oh, that's awesome.
To use a local example, Bryce Harper has Rob Thompson in the dugout.
There you go.
You need that mirror. You need that source of objectivity. And if you really want to be good at something, if you really want to be good, you want to be around people that are going to tell you what you're not good at. Because if you know it all, you're already lost.
Yeah.
When I met George Foreman in person, he was asked the question by the person who was in the room with us. That person asked him, what do you think of someone who says they can never be beaten at anything? And George said, he's either real young or real dumb. So you got to be willing to get coached. And I knew at that juncture of my life, especially with the freight that I was going to be paying him, because he ain't cheap. And I'm not saying that as a critique.
That's what I was alluding to.
It's value. I had to really pony up that I had to be 100%, period, or else I'm wasting not just my time, but my money. And, I wanted, this is a guy, Dana Cavalier is a guy who worked with Alex Rodriguez, Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, Joe Torre, Joe Girardi. Like, these are like, the cream of the crop. And I'm thinking to myself, what's he want to work with a ham and egger like me? So I wanted to prove that I was going to be not just a good student. I wanted to be known as one of his hardest working students, one of his best students,
Mm-hmm.
that I was worthy of his time, that he could say publicly, there's a hardworking guy right there, which he has.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to speak for him. But I wanted to not only improve myself, but I wanted to show that I was worthy of his time and get his approval. Like, good job, kid. You did a good job.
See,
and that was important. That was important to me, that I wanted him to say that, hey, man, you followed the program. Way to go. And, proof's in the pudding. I'm not sitting here with you if I didn't listen to him.
I find that so telling in the sense of tough guys with their armor and their shields, but that vulnerability to know that I wanted coach to think or to know. I love that. I absolutely love that sense that it mattered enough to you what he thought. I think it's great. And that you knew that it was important to earn the trust and respect. I want to go to the professional side, though. So before you made this leap, you were literally trolling the hallways of 94. I cannot do this guy's voice. 94
Plaza, baby.
YSP, damn right. But that was your start, man. And it's
dude. Lucky me. I mean, that my first job in radio was at Market 4, which is absurd. Doesn't happen.
And station 1 of Market 4.
Yeah, with Howard Stern in the morning and classic rock and roll all day. That was literally what Paul Turner used to say. 94 WYSP, Howard Stern all morning, classic rock and roll all day. It was like, that was the thing, man. And I got a chance to work there. I mean, I was just in the right place at the right time. I managed to make the right friends and scored an interview with Tim Sabian, who was Howard Stern's program director. I mean, he ran WYSP, he ran WXRK in New York, he ran WJFK in DC, and he gave me an interview. And I literally show up to the interview with a hat on backwards. That's how young and stupid I was at 19 years old. And he still hired me.
How about that?
He still hired me. Now, he didn't pay me a nickel. He said, your first job is going to be $0. I got to answer phones for public affairs programming on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. Now, think about that. Let's do the context.
Yes.
We just talked about how I'm a bouncer. I work Saturday nights till 2, 3 in the morning. Basically had enough time to go home, grab a shower, maybe an hour nap, something to eat, and drive way back out to Bala Cynwyd from Northeast Philly to go work at 5 a.m. in the morning for no money. And I did that for months, because after the public affairs program, and they said, hey, stick around and do the same, answer the pre and post game show callers calling into the host. I got to do that too. But that it goes back to the sacrifice, to the choice I made with Coach Goodwin, to the choice
bologna
to make bologna sandwiches. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. But because I saw a track record of success from making bologna sandwiches to eventually directing my own TV shows at age 15, 16 years old, I was able to make that connection. I said, well, okay, I'm going to rinse and repeat the same formula. I'm going to go in there. I'm not going to worry about getting paid, but I'm going to get to know everybody. They're going to get to know me, and I'm going to make something happen out of here. And sure enough, the people I met at that radio station are responsible for my entire career as a professional, period. And I still talk to the two main guys routinely. Tim Sabian, I talk to Tim probably once every other week, at least. And it's not just, a like on a Twitter post. We're on the phone and we're catching up. He's like an adopted uncle to me. I love that guy. I mean, and he's one of the biggest, most accomplished radio and television executives, forget about in Philadelphia, in the world.
In the world. And ever. And
if I call him up, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this because I love the guy and we're tight. If I call him up on his cell phone, he picks up. And he's a busy man. And, I go out on my way to reciprocate. But, that being able to meet Tim made me able to meet Paul Turner.
Right.
And Paul wound up hiring me full time. I worked for him for a decade. I managed his voiceover career. I ran his production studio. I helped him sell his production studio. I stayed with that place for another 17 years. And, he's one of my longest friends. I've been in his wedding. He was in mine. We've seen our kids grow up. It's a great story. But these are people that I had to pay attention to. I had to be committed to. I had to listen to. That's a big lesson in the book too. So you don't hear people, you have to listen.
From your dad. And that's
See how it all ties together, man? I've been telling you.
It's crazy to me when I hear you articulate it, but I wanted to ask you, when did it occur to you, maybe not first, but how young or early on was it that you realized how important it was for you to keep a connection? This is the theme that I think is one of the most fascinating to me, is how you stay connected with all of these individuals. It's not a random Twitter post, to quote you. When did you realize? Or was that always you?
It's not in the book, but the person attributed is in the book.
Okay.
My mother, I should tell her this all the time, was the best friend to anyone ever. She was the glue. She would pick up the phone and call this person, go out to lunch with that person, go to the movies with that person. She was always had dinner plans on the weekend. She would go and visit people at their homes if they were sick, and she would drop off food and family members. She always had people coming to the house. And you see it happen in real time. Like, stay connected with people, keep in touch with people. It's important. And if someone matters to you, you keep in touch with them. And look, there are plenty of people I don't keep in touch with. I'm not going to get into the reasons or who those people are. They know it. If they're watching, they know it. I'm not calling you. But you and I keep in touch
100%.
A lot.
100%.
And there are people that came through the hallowed halls of Go Get Itville and
Go Get It Nation.
That have hired me as their coach, and we worked together for many, many months. And they don't pay me anymore, and that's totally fine. But we stay connected. It's an email, a text, a quick call, a little Zoom to catch up, whatever it is. I'm a loyal effing pup, brother. I'm a loyal pup. I was with the same company from 19 years old until I was 47. Okay. I'm with the same woman. Okay. And I have zero intentions of going anywhere because I married the queen. We've been together since 1997, period. When I work with people, I stay with them for a long time. I'm committed. Here's that commitment word again.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, if you're going to do something, do it 100%. Be in touch with people 100%. It's like a ham and eggs breakfast, John. You know that?
Or a Burger King coffee, brother.
You know what it means? A ham and eggs breakfast. You need to be the pig, not the chicken. The chicken makes a contribution.
Thank you for that.
The pig makes a commitment.
Makes a commitment.
Right? You got to be committed.
You've
and that's,
that
it all
before,
ties into the hard work, stick-to-itiveness, vision, hustle, self-sacrifice. Yes, you need to learn to put yourself first. You need to take care of yourself because you can't fill from an empty cup. But damn it, if you're going to have people in your life, you better keep them close to you.
I just think it's smart anything, let alone smart business, and a great reminder. Look, you beautifully described your mom and dad, separate chapters and all that stuff, obviously separate people. And what I was going to ask you is this, rather than quote from the book, I want people to read that part. It's such a powerful part. But I'll ask you, from either your mom or your dad or both, what traits have you carried as a parent? You've got 2 kids that you got from your mom or your dad.
Well, definitely my work ethics from my old man. I mean, he just did it by example. I mean, there's a joke in the book that we made fun of him that he was never at work on time. He was always an
I
hour
love
early.
this.
He was always an hour early, and we would
Mhm.
ridicule him. What are you going to work so early for? He would always say, your start time is not the time you arrive. You get all your nonsense done, so that way when it's time to start working, you're working right at the bell.
I love what he described as nonsense, like eating your breakfast or arriving.
Coffee, getting your notes together, cleaning up your desk, whatever it was. And there was a short time where I worked for him when I was a teenager, and I had to get to work. Like, he had to get to work at like 7 a.m., but he would always get there at like 5:30.
Right.
I had to get to work before 5, but he and I were racing to see who would get there first, because I didn't want to have to sit down at the dinner table and have him give me crap about it. Well, I got to beat you at work today. What the hell's your problem? That was the last thing. And to hear him try to wake me up, that was like painful to hear my dad's voice, to get my ass out of bed at 19 years old, because he would just give me a hard time. But yeah, work ethic from my old man.
Yeah.
And, from mom, it was be a leader. Period. My mom was the boss everywhere. My mother literally was the boss everywhere. She was the boss of the family unit at home. Even though she wasn't the principals at the school she taught at, she was the big swinging what school that she was at. They knew she was the leader. She was the Michael Jordan on those teams. She was the lead. She was the matriarch of the family. When her mother passed when I was a teenager, that torch was passed to her. She was the matriarch. She, all the family events, she was the boss. And nobody ever effed with my mother. She was 5'3", a little nothing, but she was the toughest woman, because she had a way. It was a look. It was the how she would articulate certain things that you just didn't want to disappoint her, period. And, between my father's work ethic and my mother's leadership, you bake that cake and here's what you get.
It's really powerful. And folks, make certain all of the chapters are great. Those two, when you said, Corey, earlier, the one, especially about your mom, was like a really tough one. I get that. For your dad now, I think about like my dad passed, I guess it was 14. I guess it's closer to 15 years. And my mom is still very much alive. What's it like for your dad now? And I don't mean sad. I don't mean it like that, but like as in the carrying on, in the resilience part, what's it like for your dad now?
It's tough not to include the word sad in my dad's everyday. Okay. Even though you kind of wrap the question in that, it's tough to avoid it, because he met my mother in 1968, right, on New Year's Eve, on a blind date, and they were together ever since. Oh my God. They were married for 53 years, and they were always together. They traveled the world, literally the world, Japan, Australia, Europe. They were everywhere together. And my mother was always pulling him somewhere. I could hear them bickering at each other right now. And he's hanging tough. He's doing the best he can. For him, his reason to get up every day are his grandchildren, my 2 sons, period. Thank goodness, my older boy, Chris, is still pretty local to where
he's by me in Philadelphia.
So Christopher is in Phoenixville, and my dad's in Yardley. So they make the trek up Turnpike, and they have dinner, routinely. And, he's got a great wife, and they all get along nice, but he's always concerned about, making sure Chris is doing the right thing. So he's there to kind of, help Chris when needed. And then obviously with, my youngest, every little thing he does on the baseball field and all of his accomplishments, he's just, bursting with pride, can barely complete a sentence without getting emotional talking about him. So it's all about my kids. I mean, he's very proud of me, and he thinks the world of my wife. But our relationship has it's kind of transformed. I mean, it's kind of funny how things work out. I mean, you grow up and he's the parent and you're the son, and then you spend some time as an adult where you're kind of like peers, like when you're in your 20s and 30s and dad is in his 50s and 60s. And now that he's in his 80s and I'm in my 50s, it's he'll say this, it's almost like he's my third son now, because mom is not there.
Yep.
He leans on me as his second opinion, as his sounding board. He'll always say, well, son, I'm trying to imitate my dad. And if you don't know my dad, this isn't funny to you. If you know my dad, you hear me imitating him.
Do it. Come on.
He'll always be like, yeah, I just want to make sure to run everything by you, son. It's important to me to make sure that you approve of the decisions that I'm making. My dad has this booming
radio
voice like that.
I'm gonna say
not necessarily radio, but just has this. It's very authoritative, at least the way I hear it, because I remember when he would, he would articulate certain things if I wasn't behaving myself. So that kind of etches a certain imprint in my brain. But we talk all the time. I'm going to get a chance to see him soon, which will be great. He's coming out here for a week.
Great.
It's not the same without mom around. It's at least once a week her name will come up in conversation and he'll get emotional on the phone.
Sure.
He does the best he can. That's all I could ask him to do. And I listen. I try to listen. And offer whatever, sympathy. And, I tell him it sucks. It sucks, Pop.
It just does.
I remind him that if my mother were around, she would say, Steven, get off of your ass and stop moping around and go take care of this, that, or the other. She would not tolerate, either one of us just dwelling on it. She'd want us to take action and move on and get on with our lives and get things done.
I love the fact that you are very generous with including your dad in regards to your kids, whether that was just going to happen, whether he was, but whatever it is, it's
no choice.
No,
but
that's okay.
I'm not upset about that. I want him. That's fuel for him.
Those things happen, and it's great. You not just have had vision, you not just have had the hustle, you have made the commitment and also have a tremendous amount of guts, because you made how many years with the production company?
27 plus.
And you make a move to follow one of your kids.
Sure
what
did.
Gave you the guts to be able to literally pack up and split?
Well, I mean, it wasn't an overnight decision. First, you need to know that.
Right.
We talk about vision.
Yeah.
I saw this coming. I knew it would happen. I wanted it to happen. I knew there was a point in my career that I knew I was not going to be there forever. I had to make that realization. Now, keep in mind, I had a really good setup. I made a tremendous salary there. I had all kind of perks and benefits. I'm not knocking the position that I had. I had a lot of authority. I had a lot of autonomy. Yeah. I got a chance to run the ship. It was great, but I knew the only other thing, I hit the ceiling. I wasn't going to buy the company. I wasn't interested in doing that. And when you couple that sense of not being fulfilled doing that every day anymore after doing it for so long,
right?
You couple that with reading the tea leaves where my son's athletic career was going, and the two of those could not remain parallel anymore.
Yeah,
we had to do something. And in about 2018, I said, what can I do to start a little business that wouldn't conflict with the production company? Because everybody said, Corey, go be an agent, go book VO talent. You're the VO guy. Everybody knows that. You can do it. And I said, even though I wasn't necessarily happy doing what I was doing, I didn't want to stick it to the guy I was working for.
Yeah.
It's just not, I wouldn't be able to sleep well at night knowing that. So I wanted to do something that was independent, that could stand on its own 2 feet and wouldn't create a conflict. And that's where I came up with this, entrepreneurial coaching, and I could work with voice talent, but we weren't booking them jobs or anything. We were teaching them how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to build that in the background, and I would do that. I basically had 2 full-time jobs for a couple of years.
Right.
I would do stuff early in the morning on lunch breaks. I met you on a lunch break in King of Prussia. We had,
right.
We hung out there at lovely Burger King and had shitty coffee.
2018. Late 2018 is when that was. Before you continue, I'm curious about those parallel paths. So that's 2018. You've thought, I can create something. I'm going to create something. When did you realize it was serious with Jordan? You're reading the tea leaves. How old was Jordan when you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is different. Then he's good. He's not bad at baseball.
I knew that really early. I'm talking like he might have been 13.
Back to the vision. What did you see?
Well, other people were telling me your kid needs to go to Malvern Prep High School, which is the number one baseball school in Pennsylvania. And I had some people who I bumped into said, he's got to go to Malvern. And look, I'm a Jewish kid, and we were going to send him to an Augustinian Catholic school. No idea what the hell to expect. You went to Catholic school.
I apologize in advance.
So that was a big leap of faith right there. But knowing, learning, and meeting who the coaches were there, and the track record of who they had, the guys who were playing Division I baseball, and even in the pros. Ben Davis, who was the Phillies broadcaster, Malvern Prep graduate.
Yep.
So I knew then that he was pretty good, and he had a shot to play at the next level, and he was being recruited by D1 schools as a sophomore. So that was right around 2018. He graduated in 2020. So, I wasn't going to allow geography to interrupt me being a part of his baseball life. Meaning if he went to, a school in the Southeast or up in New York or in the, wherever in Kentucky, we were going to figure out a way to be there. And, as his recruiting journey started to congeal, and you meet with these different schools and you talk to this one, that, and the other one, he kind of landed on the University of Richmond in Virginia. And, for those of you familiar with I-95, I know it's a big topic of discussion now because they just rebuilt a big portion of it. But beyond that, I-95 from New York down to Florida, if you're on certain parts of that at the wrong time of the day, your trip time will double or triple. And to drive from Philadelphia to Richmond, you're talking, if there's no traffic, it's 5 hours. But we experienced in his recruiting trips where that took 8 hours.
Easy.
And I said I was not going to do that. I wasn't going to drive from Philly to Virginia every weekend to watch him play ball. So we said, all right, we're going to go get a place in Virginia. And that's what we did. And I told the owner of the production company that I said, that's what I'm doing. Now, keep in mind, this was in the middle of COVID. Here we are. This is July 2020. COVID hit in March 2020. Right. I had been working from home for a decade prior to that. I'd been running that company from home. I thought, it's a win-win for me. Either I'm going to keep working from them remotely and continue to be compensated as such, or that's not going to go over too well. And I got my thing standing on its own 2 feet and I'll figure it out. And it ended up being the latter. But I downsized my entire life, John. I had a big 4-bedroom house. My wife drove a Mercedes. I had a huge 4-door pickup truck. We got rid of all of it. We either sold, gave away, or threw out half of our material stuff, all the crap you collect in 20 years of marriage. And we moved to a little apartment in the middle of South Boston, Virginia, in the middle of nowhere. And we lived there for a year during COVID. Drove only 2 hours north to Richmond to watch him play ball, which was easy. There's no traffic out that way. It was like Dukes of Hazzard where we lived.
Well, it's you.
Yeah, that basically it was a one-horse town without a horse. I mean, we thought we wanted small town living, but as it turns out, that was an experiment that didn't go well. My son didn't have the best experience there, and he had the opportunity. I have a friend of mine who's an MLB agent who said, "Hey, man, if you want your son to have a shot, he's got to come out to Southern California and prove he can play with these guys, because that's a whole other level of baseball in Southern California." So he had an opportunity. We took a flight out there, spent a weekend, went to like 4 or 5 different schools, met with coaches, and he said, "I want to play with this one coach who happened to be at Saddleback University." And the coach promised Jordan, he said, if you do what you're supposed to do, if you're capable of doing what you can do, you will get seen out here. Scouts are around all the time. Well, we moved twice in 2 years. First from Philly to Virginia. Then we packed up Virginia and drove cross country 3,000 miles to California, like the Beverly Hillbillies.
Right.
Literally, moved into an apartment that we didn't even see in person. Like, I didn't even know what I was getting till I stood inside. We just did it on faith. And, betting, my son was going to bet on himself that he was going to play well and good things are going to happen. And, I'll bet on my son for anything. Like, he delivers. And so we did it, and we figured, okay, rather than sending him out there and him having his own place and we still live in Virginia and having to go back and forth, it made no sense. So we said, we're going to move with him. We lived with him. He lived with us. I said, you just worry about making good grades and hitting baseballs. Well, he had a 3.9 in the fall and a 4.0 in the spring. He took 43 credits in a year.
Oh my God. Typical 30 is like
he took 43 because he had to have enough to get his AA, his associate's degree, to be eligible for a D1 scholarship. Wow. Should he decide to go D1 again. He was offered basically a full boat from the University of California, San Diego, which is basically Ivy League West, huge academic school. And he got offered to play baseball out there. But at the same time, he put up video game numbers at Saddleback. I had the Yankees, I had the Mets, I had the Rangers in my living room. I had the Phillies calling on Zoom.
There you go.
I had 15 other teams kicking the tires on him, sending him emails, watching him at the games. And then sure enough, in July of 2022, his name was called in the 12th round by the Phillies. Go figure. We moved 3,000 miles across the country, and the hometown team drafts him. You couldn't have written it better. And now he's in A-ball with the Clearwater Threshers. He's the primary receiver there. He's lighting it up there, having a great season.
Batting third or fifth?
It varies. He's batted as high as second.
Yeah.
Anywhere between 2 and 6. He's been landing mostly a lot in the 5 spot, which is a great spot for him.
Great.
But he's getting a lot of playing time. He's contributing. He's learning. He's still a baby. He's like the 4th youngest guy on the whole team. And he's doing really well. And we're spending a lot of money on airline tickets now to go to go watch him play, because my wife loves Southern California, and as do I. We didn't know what we were getting when we got here. But we live in an amazing area of the state in Orange County. We're 10 minutes from the beach. And, we live in a gated community, and we have a pool and a hot tub and all these things that are just so fancy. We're so unfancy. But it's just a great area. It's a very diverse community, a very tolerant community. There's not a lot of nonsense. Everything's clean. The weather's beautiful. There's a million reasons I can go on and on. The only reason that you wouldn't want to live here is it costs a lot to live here. But you know what? We're figuring it out. And I've taken the philosophy, as long as the rent's paid, the fridge is full, and there's gas in the car, I'm good. Everything else is a bonus.
I love it, man.
So that's what we did, and that's, in a very long-winded, convoluted way, that's where we knew Jordan had a shot to play professional baseball. We knew from a young age. We made these moves because we knew he could play, and we knew he could hang in there. And he's got a gift. The kid's got a gift. And now it's just about working hard. See how that comes full circle?
That's why I asked, that it's
up to him. He's got to work hard. Doesn't matter. Yes, everyone there is good. They're all professional. They're all good. It's not, They were all King Kong somewhere before they got signed by the Phillies. So now it's just he has to be able to produce and show that he works hard and he can be a leader. We talked about that too.
Yep.
And be mature and grow up and develop. And if he continues to do those things, fingers crossed, in a few years, maybe we'll see him at Citizens Bank Park. We'll see.
Oh, here is hoping. But I will not quite leave it at this, but I will say for you and the Queen, what's it like for you now in terms of not just the quality of life, you just described that, but what I was going to say is, you've got kids that are adults, but they're still kids. You've got a business that's become sustainable, but you're still balancing all these sorts of things. What do you see in your eyes in terms of your own trajectory? Like, what would you like to be able to accomplish while you're out there, in addition to writing a sequel?
Well, I joked about this on another podcast with our buddy Jim Cooper. If I get involved in another big project, I think Elaine's going to move back to Philly, and she does, or at least kick me out. She doesn't want me to get involved in anything, another big project again. Honestly, man, I'm trying to do less.
Got it.
I can't,
Great.
Like I said, we're not rolling in the dough here. I'm not taking any trips on the company yacht anytime soon. And I'm okay with that. I'm not ashamed to say that. We live
in Laguna Beach.
We live very comfortable in a very nice area. It's about QTL, man. Quality time left. We've talked about that.
Yep.
And, yesterday was a great example. I did some work in the morning, got a little workout in, and my wife and I spent about an hour and a half at the pool, got a little sunshine. Then we went out and got a bite to eat at a local spot. Just being able to hang out, that's cool. And, we're flying to Clearwater, Florida on Sunday to go watch a week's worth of games, to watch, Jordan play. And, that's what we want that flexibility to do. That's what it's all about. Hopefully my older boy will leave his socks on one night and get us some grandkids.
There you go.
I mean, that we're hoping, my wife and I are hoping for that. And, Jordan, beyond his career pursuits, has a very serious girlfriend, and the two of them are peas in a pod. And then she comes from a great family. And, who knows? I mean, there might be another daughter-in-law in the making. So, there's a lot of good things going on. We're very lucky. However, I will say we made our luck. We made decisions to be in this position. We made sacrifices to be in this position. We're thankful we're in Southern California, but we didn't know we were going to like Southern California so much. But like I said, the reason we came out here was to give Jordan a clear path without distractions, so he can just worry about making his grades and doing well on the field and training and keeping himself in shape. He didn't have to worry about a lot of the other things that athletes who play college ball have to worry about, doing their laundry, making sure they're fed, keeping their, room in order, all that stuff. We said, don't worry about any of that crap, dude. Just take care of those two things. We got the rest. Go chase your dream. And here we are.
I'll ask you this. At this point, in terms of everything that has taken place, somebody sees your book. I'm biased. I knew I needed to read it just because I know you, and I knew I'd get something from it. Who is this book? Who did you write this book for?
I wrote this book for anyone that has a dream, that has a career pursuit, that has a goal that they are chasing, to give them a blueprint, to give them sort of 10 commandments to follow. Can't miss commandments. If you pay attention to these 10 things that I talk about in the book, it's really tough to lose.
Okay.
And I didn't want to present a book to someone that was based on some kind of theory or something that I learned in a classroom or that I went and attended a conference. It wasn't something that I'm regurgitating from Gary Vee or Tony Robbins. I lived this shit. I did it. And I present real stories, real things that happen. I don't only tell you what to do, what works. I show it to you in real time. Here's how this was applied. This is how and why it happened. And if you take these lessons and you piece them together and you apply what you read, you'll be able to write your own book.
See, folks, it's really important to me. As I said again, I wanted to have Corey back for selfish reasons, but folks, for you, everyone, anyone means anyone, everyone. The book, Going the Distance. I'm sorry. Wait. There you go. Going.
There he is.
There you go. Going the Distance. That guy is hot, but not.
You got to show the back too, man. That's where you get to see the abs and all that stuff, man. Check it out,
brother. Listen, I didn't even comment once about the part. You literally look like you took over as being the mayor of Venice Beach, but that's a little further north from you, for you as well too. You'd scare people if you showed up on Venice Beach. You'd freaking scare them. They'd be like, oh, God, I got to get to the gym a little more often.
Mission accomplished.
But I am so happy for you, so proud of you, and I so am really grateful that you made the time for us again today. Corey Dissin, thank you so much for being here. Going the Distance, 2 S's, is the book. Go get it. Oh, my God. That came naturally and organically. Go get it is right. Thanks so much, man.
Literally, go get it on
Damn
Amazon.
Right. Damn right. Thank you for all this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Elaine, my love, too.
Always a pleasure. We'll have to do it again soon.
Count on it. Folks, you just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, watching, listening, sharing. Tell your friends, tell your folks, and we will keep driving content right through your front door. John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Have a great rest of the day, folks. Go get it.
Go get it.
Thank you all. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.